Good evening and welcome to tonight's Town Talk. I'm City Manager Scott Neal. This year we planned a series of Town Talks around topics important to Edina residents. Tonight we are going to talk about the South Metro Public Safety Training Facility. Executive Director Bob Slater will provide history of the facility, description of the trainings offered there, and the impact of those trainings on the public. He will also share details of a new tactical training center and a plan for the site, which is located on Braemar Boulevard. Bob will speak for about 30 minutes. After his presentation, he will take questions. We will end tonight's Town Talk when there are no more questions or at 8 o'clock, whichever comes first. However, you can continue to ask questions and make comments online at the bettertogetheredina.org site for the next week. The online conversation closes on Thursday, October 3rd. Now I would like to formally introduce Bob, who began working at the training facility in late 2022 after successful careers in several other fields. Bob started his career as a history teacher at St. Thomas Academy. He worked there for 24 years as a teacher, coach, and administrator, leaving in 2003 as the school principal and dean of students. He then went on to work at Capital Computer Group as vice president of operations until 2016. And when St. Thomas Academy beckoned him back to serve as the Director of Athletics and Activities. He worked there until 2019 and then went on to work for the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Twin Cities and KIPP schools in North Minneapolis. He joined our staff in December of 2022. Please welcome Bob Slater.
Thanks, Scott.
Welcome.
Thanks. Good evening. Thanks to all of you who are tuning in. I first want to just say how fortunate I feel to be working for the City of Edina. Having worked in education for over 30 years and private business for over 13, this has been a real change, and it's something that I've really enjoyed, and I feel very, very fortunate to be here. Even though the building I manage is not owned by the City of Edina, I am an Edina employee. And it's just a tremendous amount of support throughout the city for the work that we do. So I do want to thank Scott and his staff and all the people in Edina that have made me feel so welcome. People ask, why did you go from education into public safety? And I don't have a really good response for that, but the very first week I was working at South Metro, I had a police officer come up. He said, Bob, I just want to apologize. I know we're a tough group to deal with, and you seem like a great guy, and you're doing a good job. Just hang in there. And I just want to apologize for all the problems we might cause you. I said, Dan, do you know what it's like to supervise a lunchroom or to get elementary kids on a school bus or have to deal with hockey parents? You guys are a piece of cake compared to that. I really enjoy working with the police and fire departments. Their personality is much like mine, I think, and they're very driven. They work in life and death situations, and they don't take any shortcuts in their training. So they have high expectations, and I like that, and it's really enjoyable each day to try to serve their needs. The South Metro Training Facility is a unique enterprise in the Twin Cities. I think it's sort of on the cutting edge of public safety training right now. We're seeing a number of communities want a dedicated facility for police officers to train in, firefighters to train, and with many of the fire departments in the metro area going to a full-time employee type model, they have a real demand for specific training facilities. So we're very well known throughout the Twin Cities. We're one of several combination facilities that a variety of public safety and first responder groups can train at. And we also offer a number of different courses and classes for these public servants to increase their training, to take continuing education classes and things like that. Our hope, our vision, is that we want to be the preeminent training facility for police and fire departments throughout the metro area. We want to be a known entity in the Southwest Metro, And the number of departments that send folks to us is really growing by the day. The uniqueness of our facility is that it's not owned by the City of Edina. It's owned by 4 different entities, and we call that a joint powers agreement. It's owned by the City of Edina, the City of Bloomington, the City of Eden Prairie, and the Metropolitan Airport Commission. And what we have is the 3 cities all have their police and fire departments trained there. The Metropolitan Airport only sends its police to train there. Due to their fire department having to fight fires that are not in structures or buildings, they use a lot more chemicals. And what we have at our facility really isn't conducive to good training for them. The governance of our facility is a board of directors. Each of the city managers of the 3 cities is on the board. Scott Neal, the city manager of Edina, is our board chair. And then the Metropolitan Airport Commission has one of its directors sit on the board. There are 4 meetings throughout the year. Each quarter we have a board meeting, and they are responsible for the governance of our facility. Below the board, we then convene a group called the Chiefs Group, and that's the chief of police and the chief of the fire department in each of the cities, and the chief of police for the Metropolitan Airport Commission. Below them is the training officers. Each of the departments has a group of employees dedicated to training and instruction for their police or firefighters, and we meet quarterly with them as well, and they are the ones that sort of the first point of contact with each department. What are things that need to be enhanced? What are some of the challenges they're facing in using part of our facility and things like that? You can see by the screen I have up right now that each of the cities is really dedicated to putting forth the best efforts to train their public safety employees. It's not something that any of the cities take lightly. And what I've learned over the almost 2 years I've been working is when we talk about training opportunities or equipment that's needed, nobody's trying to cut corners on this. And I see that reflected in a number of different ways. But the most important way is every time we have to do something, whether it's a repair, whether it's to get something new, safety is always the first consideration. We're not just going to go buy a shiny new object or get the latest and greatest of equipment. We want to make sure that it's adding to the safety and that there's a dedicated training purpose to it. And if you have a chance to read any of those explanations on the cities, that comes through over and over again. It comes through when you talk to the chiefs, the training officers, and certainly with the city managers. There's a lot of different things that take place at the South Metro Training Facility. We have all sorts of different groups that come in. And one of the things that we try to be is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Right now we're in the midst of watching the profession of firefighting change. It's moving from what most of our members had was a part volunteer, part full-time department to moving more to a full-time. Edina Fire Department now is entirely full-time. Eden Prairie is gradually moving that way, and so is Bloomington. As I talk to some of my colleagues throughout the metro area, the facilities they run, they're starting to see the same thing in local communities. The demands on these folks are such that it's getting harder and harder to have a dependable force if it's only part-time or paid on call as they are called. On the screen you're seeing a number of different training scenarios from fire to police, and I hope throughout the presentation that we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the different kinds of training. One of the things that I think that the citizens of Edina should be really proud about is that departments from around the state of Minnesota and the upper Midwest are sending their people to the South Metro Public Safety Training Facility because it is such a preferred spot for education, for training, and for executing different techniques that they're trying to pick up. We have a variety of different types of groups that belong to us. The four most important groups are our joint owners. They get priority on everything. They get to schedule their time on the range and the fire tower and the classrooms before any of the outside groups. So I just want to kind of touch on that a little bit. The second level of groups that we deal with or try to service are what we call our member contracts. And these are organizations from outside our ownership group that spend at least $10,000 a year at our facility, and then they're entitled to some reduced rates depending upon what part of the facility they're renting. The three most prominent members that we have are Minnetonka, both their fire and police, the Veterans Affairs Police Department, and the VA has got a pretty extensive portfolio of things that they're responsible for. And then the Federal Air Marshals, which surprised me when I first started working there. They probably come in there more often than any of the outside agencies, though. And early in my tenure here, I happened to be talking to their training officer, whose father had been the chief of police in Princeton, and his brother was he was a ranger. He was a trainer for the Ranger Snipers. I said, Nate, why did you go into a federal law enforcement position instead of, being a police officer like your dad or going into the service like your brother? He just said, Bob, this is the greatest gig I could get. He goes, I love to shoot. I've been shooting my whole life. He said, when you're a federal agent, you get to shoot about 4 times as many rounds as a local police officer. And he said, I did it just because I wanted to shoot so much. And I've gone over to the Air Marshal's office, which is very close. It's about a 2-minute drive from our facility. It's in Edina, right along 78th in an office park there. And they have mock-ups of planes and cabins and cockpits that they try to do some of their close order training in, but they have to be so proficient at using their weapons that they are in our facility every week. I've learned so much from just watching people and the way that they train and the way they instruct. And having been a teacher myself, I just find it fascinating to see the different ways that people try to impart instruction. A big part of what we do is we rent out space. Now we have 3 classrooms, we have 2 ranges, we have the fire tower, and we have what's called defensive tactics gyms, or we just call them the mat room. And if you think of a wrestling room, where a high school wrestling team would train with a padded floor and padded walls, this is where a lot of the law enforcement agencies practice how to arrest people, how to put somebody in handcuffs, how to deal with people that are belligerent or obstinate. We have a lot of groups that offer coursework. Police and firefighters have to keep their credentials up. They have to continually be educated on the latest and greatest techniques and philosophies of their profession. So we have a lot of different groups that come in and offer courses. And generally the way that works is the company that's offering the course, we will charge them a flat rental fee, and then they sell their seats. So we can host as big a class as 80 and as small as you want. But our capacity for a large class is 80 people, and we take a wall down in the middle of our 2 classrooms that are together, and you can sit 80 people in there. Some of the interesting groups here, the DOJ ATF group, I get a kick out of when they come in because typically they come into our facility to offer demonstrations and education to state officials. It can be district court judges, it can be attorneys, it can be Congress people. And when they bring these people in, they try to demonstrate what's going on out on the streets. What's a ghost gun? What are the types of weapons that are sort of illicit, that are not being purchased in a legal manner? And they show the judge, this is why a ghost gun is so dangerous. And so these legal people get a chance to see what actually is going on with some of these weapons. And I learn something every time they come in. They're a real enjoyable group to have in. Might be interested to see MAD. About a year ago, the group of folks from MAD came to us and said, would you ever allow us to have our MAD impact statements here? And the Mothers Against Drunk Driving are a huge force in trying to educate people about the dangers of driving under the influence. But what they have a problem with is when somebody goes to court for a DUI and they are convicted, part of what they have to do is provide a victim impact statement. They have to sort of take responsibility for their actions. They were having trouble finding space where it was easy to get to, that could hold enough people, and that would accommodate what their needs were. And they said, would you ever do that? I know it's not your mission to cater to groups like ours. And I talked about it with some of the chiefs, and they thought that was a great way to get involved more in the community. And so once a month we have a group from MAD come in, and it's a full house each time, which is kind of a sad statement on our affairs, but they come in all the time. Other groups, you know, we have self-defense groups, we have continuing education groups. One of the stipulations we have is that any of the city departments that want to have a big meeting space, they can come and use our facility, and they pay half the rental fee. And so Edina probably uses that more than any of the cities. Eden Prairie from time to time will use it. Bloomington not so much. They have, over at their city hall, they have plenty of room over there. But Edina High School, they have meetings for their trap team in the spring. In the summer, when they're trying to get lifeguards up and going, they have their water safety orientation meeting there. So we see a real cross-section of people come through. Our facility is part of the Braemar Park, which is a 402-acre parcel of property that includes the hockey arena, the ball fields, the golf course, and we're just the tiny southern tip of that very large piece of land. We have a footprint that is growing as we speak. Right now, the main building that houses the shooting ranges and the classrooms is right next to a fire tower, which is 8 stories tall. And behind that, and I'll get to that a little bit later in my presentation, is going to be a tactical training facility. And we're still looking for a good name for that building, but it's essentially a place where police officers can do some really high-tech training. Let's see. How did this all come about? I've tried to learn a little bit about the background here, and it's a pretty interesting story. So if you're familiar with where we're located, we're right next to the Public Works yard where a lot of their dirt and debris is stored. They have a big protected building for sand and other material that it'll keep it dry in the weather. But that property was owned by a family named Whipperman. And there used to be an old shooting range there. Law enforcement didn't train there, but the public could go use it. And then unfortunately, one of the Whipperman children was killed in a very unfortunate hunting accident. And the Whippermans wanted to work with the city and with other groups to provide a place where not only youth would be educated about gun safety issues, but the public would have a place to go and use guns safely. And so the city made the Whippermans started sort of this orientation towards gun safety with the Edina Optimist Club. And from there, the city of Edina got involved and made a very important commitment to the Whipperman family, and that is that if this facility were built, there would always be a commitment to keeping it open for the public and to try to do as much for youth gun safety as possible. So, and Scott Neal, when he hired me, he said that we're never going to vary from that. And the reason that's important is at a lot of gun ranges like ours, who are more oriented towards training, they don't want to have a lot of public shooting. They want to reserve it for law enforcement and the military. So when people find out that we're open on Wednesday nights and Friday nights and all day Saturday, they're like, Bob, how can you let the public in that much? You know, isn't it ruining your facility? And no, it doesn't. We're one of the best kept secrets in the shooting community because we're very clean, we're very safe, and that we're open so often. Now there's a variety of other gun ranges in the Twin Cities where you can go to a 2-lane or a 3-lane gun store and shoot, but one of the things, we have range safety officers on duty anytime the public is there. At a lot of places you won't see a range safety officer visible. And we will always have one safety officer on the range, one safety officer greeting the public and taking money, and then one who's kind of floating around and seeing who needs help. Our range safety officers do a lot of education, a lot of training, and they really build up a lot of goodwill with our customers. The Joint Powers Agreement allows us to tap into the resources of each of our 4 owners. And I don't know if that was always the intent, but it's certainly something that I try to take advantage of. We have some very talented and smart people in each of these positions, so I want to take advantage of that. The Whippermans really loved it when we were offering the DNR gun safety courses. Now we have tried to revive that, but the hang-up is the DNR doesn't want to do in-person classes as much anymore. Most of their gun safety is done online. We've talked to instructors, we've offered our place for free just to get young people to come in and do it. And it's kind of a struggle in the way we live our lives today. That commitment of consecutive nights, of weekends, the DNR has just felt that it's more important to let them do it online, and then they have the one day where the kids have to carry a gun in the field and demonstrate that they know how to safely carry a gun and things like that. We're trying to find out other ways to involve youth, but right now that's probably one of our bigger challenges. So we'll keep working on it. Our range, which is probably what we're best known for. We have 2 different ranges. One is a 10-lane range, and that's what the police prefer using because that's 25 yards long with 2 lanes that are 50 yards long, so they can use a long gun on that. We don't like people using shotguns. If they use a shotgun, we want them to use slugs. If they use a shotgun with a typical shotgun shell, the BBs just really tear up the rubber that's on the back of the range that they shoot into. Whenever police officers are training on the range, they have to have a range safety officer, and that's somebody that's handpicked by their department. They identify themselves by wearing red vests, and they're very obviously a safety officer. Our safety officers are present whenever the public is there. We have 7 of them. 6 of the 7 are retired. They come from all walks of life. They are not law enforcement officers. One's a retired airline mechanic. One's a retired phone repairman. One is a retired handyman. One is a IT guy. So they're all over the board, but they're very, very proud of the work they do, and I'm eternally grateful for what they do. How many people do we get? Anywhere from 150 a month to about 175 a month, depending upon the weather in the winter and what's going on. It obviously took a dip during the pandemic, but over the last 2 years, we've averaged anywhere from 153 at a low to 176 as a high for a month. We would like to get that number up. We try to always look out for ways to market the range and engage people to come in and at least just take a look to see what we have to offer. If you are somebody that likes to shoot guns, we offer an armorer's room where you can clean your guns right on site. We dispose of all the casings and things like that. It's a pretty easy way to engage in that kind of hobby. We try to offer as many opportunities for the public to come to our facility and engage as we can. So these are the 4 classes that we're offering right now, and our staff does not offer these classes. We contract out to 2 other companies. One is called Astrid Defense. It's a husband-wife team, Jennifer and Dan McDowell. They run our handgun certification, our self-defense use classes, and if you ever want to take a class like that, we put you in touch with the McDowells, and then they let you know what the class schedule is. They rent space from us in order to be able to do that. And then we have a self-defense class. It's a martial art called Krav Maga. We're not all that familiar with it in the United States, but it's big over in the Middle East and in South America. And we have an expert, Paula Myers is our instructor, and she's also one of our range safety officers. She works for the Carver County Sheriff's Department, and she is a phenomenal instructor. I just love watching her teach her classes, but she's able to make people feel very welcome. Those are the different courses that we offer right now. If people come to us asking for some kind of a course, we'll do everything we can to try to create one. But right now, that's what we're offering. Most of those pictures are of the large range. One of the features we used to have that we no longer have was a simulation. It was called the Milo Simulator, and it was a pretty high-tech way for people to see different scenarios in which a response was demanded. Our officers weren't using it. That kind of simulated training is moving more to virtual reality. And so we had a big piece of equipment occupying a large space, and the police departments just said, we need more mat room space, because if 2 or more departments want to come in and do arrest techniques or use of force education, with only 1 room, somebody was getting left out in the cold. So now we have 2 rooms, and we're much more flexible, and we're trying to respond to the needs of the departments. But that Milo Simulator was popular with city councils, with the cities, to bring people through, to give them a taste of what kind of training their officers were going through. That no longer is there though. But you see some classes going on there. It's a lot of stuff going on. You might not know that all of these spaces are available when you look at our building. You know, we're down the hill from Braemar Arena. We're kind of before you get to the curve to go to the Golf Dome, and a lot of people don't even know we exist there, and it's really tucked in. But it's a pretty large facility. 3 classrooms. We got the large firing range, the small firing range, our cleaning rooms, and the 2 gyms, and then the fire tower, which everybody notices right away. The thing about the fire tower, it uses natural gas to create fires. There's 3 different burners. There's a kitchen fire scenario, there's a bedroom fire scenario, and there's a living room, a couch that'll burn. And not only are there burners that firefighters have to react to what's going on in that particular room and use the proper hose and put it out appropriately, but it generates smoke too. So most of the time when they can't see because the building is filled with smoke. Unfortunately, all of that equipment runs on really sensitive computerized stuff. So our biggest challenge is keeping that fire tower operational so that the fire departments can get their training in. It's not operational between November and April because you have to run water through the pipes and things like that. It'll freeze in the winter. So we'll have 2 more weeks of training yet. Wayzata Fire will be in there next week, and I think Bloomington has 1 more training session scheduled, and then we'll shut it down until next April when we'll fire it back up. But it's a really interesting building, and it's invaluable for the fire departments. I asked I thought was probably a dumb question at the time. I said, why don't we just burn a bunch of pallets so they can have some practice on wood, which is called a Class A fire when they burn wood or any kind of organic material. And because of the air pollution and we're right next to a residential area, Edina doesn't want us doing that. And so if fire departments need to practice on organic material or a Class A fire, there's a place down in Jordan and in Burnsville where they can go get that training. So I think for the foreseeable future, we'll always generate our training fires with natural gas. But they do rappelling down the side, and rescue. You'll see the stretcher coming down on their ropes. A lot of statewide agencies come there to train because it's so convenient for them. What we're in the midst of, we're just getting ready to start building this new tactical training center, and the idea of this came about probably 2018 or 2019. The police departments needed more specialized training. They needed to be able to simulate a residential dwelling. They needed to be able to simulate commercial buildings, and there's different scenarios that they have to work with. One of the things that we found out with Bloomington is that 25% of their arrests now are happening at Walmart, right there on American Boulevard. And nothing in our facility could simulate this 8 by 10 foot room that a lot of the arrests were taking place, and people get physical and they try to lash out at the police officer, and the Bloomington police officers were getting injured, and so they needed to readjust their training to teach officers how to deal with a suspect in a confined space. One of the beauties of this new building is going to be a movable wall system, so we can construct any kind of building that the police desire. We can create a long, narrow commercial office building. We can create a 2-story house. Whatever they need to do, we'll be able to create that. It's going to be big enough. You see the car that's parked there. They'll be able to pull 3 vehicles in. And a big part of their training is, what do you do on traffic stops? Because obviously some of the people they pull over are not all that compliant. So there's different techniques that they want their officers to use, and this will give them the space and the flexibility to really tailor their training towards what they're looking for. It's going to be, hopefully we start next week. We've got a little work on the permits, but once we start work, we hope to have it occupied by January 1st. And so we'll have our SWAT teams in there. There'll be hostage rescue. There'll be search and recovery. It'll be a very, very nice addition to what we already offer. I think going forward, what our challenges are is maintaining a first-class facility and doing it in a way that's economically achievable. This facility takes a lot of money. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong, and we want to keep things safe for our firefighters and our police. And so, as a staff, every day we're looking, what can we do better? How do we do this at an economical vantage point? You know, we've got to count the pennies a little bit. So, money's always going to be an issue. The firefighters, you know, they want the latest and greatest of the new burners that are out. We're going to have to look at virtual training at some point because that's going to be in demand. We're just trying to stay one step ahead of the police and fire to try to anticipate what their needs are, and we want to take care of the facility. It's a gem. I think the city of Edina is a wonderful custodian of this facility, and I think it's a positive addition to the community. Having said that, thanks. It's always fun to brag about your baby, so I enjoyed the opportunity to do that.
Fantastic job, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks for that thorough and interesting conversation and discussion. It's now time for questions. So Bob will stand for some questions now. If you have a question, call 312-535-8110 with access code 2634-629-6493 and password 5454. There is no attendee ID number. Press *3 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question. Jennifer will mute your line and place you in the queue until it is your time to speak. Jennifer, do we have any questions right now? We don't have any questions, but would you like to wait? Should we wait a little bit? Okay. So we'll wait a little bit, and this is a time when maybe I can try to stump Bob on questions. So Bob, you have lots of interesting groups that come out there to train, right? Federal government, state government, county government, special government, all those sorts of things. Has anybody ever told you, we're going to come out there and train, but we don't want you to watch us and we can't tell you what we're going to do? Do we have any of that kind of stuff? Secret stuff?
Not overtly,
Okay.
but when certain groups are on the range, there's big glass windows that you can see into the range. You know when they don't want you looking in. There's something about law enforcement. They have this way of communicating a lot by not saying very much. So some of the federal groups, they do things that they don't want you to watch.
So then you comply with that.
I do comply.
All right.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. Okay, Jennifer, do we have anyone yet? Okay. Well, I think then we will call it a night. As I mentioned earlier, you can continue to ask questions and make comments about the South Metro Public Safety and Training Facility online at bettertogetheredina.org over the next week. The online conversation closes on Thursday, October 3rd. If you have any ideas for how we should do or what kind of topics we should do for Town Talks in 2025, please let me or any member of the city's communications department know. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you, Bob, for that very interesting presentation. Thank you.